We received a question from a 36-year-old novice powerlifter who's been training for approximately 3 months and only has 2 days per week that they can devote to training. So their question is, should they be performing the power lifts twice per week, or should they be performing the power lifts once per week and throwing in some assistance? And my answer is both. You can actually do both. But let's get back to the fact that you're a novice. As you've only been training for 3 months, your primary goal and focus should be getting better at these power lifts and actually learning the proper form and then developing your technique around that form and developing your technique around your body's genetics. And as I've never seen a video of you and don't know what your size is like and body structure, I can't really comment on technique, but I just know that if you've only been training for 3 months, you need to get better at actually performing the skills, which are squatting, bench pressing, and deadlifting. That being said, since you only have 2 days per week, the first thing I would say is make sure that you have 2 days rest between your workouts. For example, it would be better to train on Monday, Thursday, or Wednesday, Friday, or Thursday, Sunday type schedule, where you have 2 days in between the 2 workouts. That would be more ideal from a recovery standpoint than for you to train on a Monday and a Wednesday, or a Tuesday and a Thursday, or something like that. That being said, I would recommend squatting and bench pressing twice per week, and then throwing in the deadlift every other week. And the reason that I'm saying that is because you told me that your deadlift is your best lift, so you probably need the least amount of practice on that one, and I would implement that every other week. So on your second day of the week, every other week, you would replace your squat with the deadlift. Now, that gives you 2 main movements of the day, and after those main movements, you could easily add in a couple of assistance exercises like pull-ups or rows or overhead pressing, floor pressing, close grip benches, some posterior chain work, abs, etc. Assuming you have more than 45 minutes to an hour to devote to your training, which hopefully you do if you're only training twice per week, you would definitely have the opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and kind of have your cake and eat it too, which is train the power lifts twice per week and throw in some assistance. The question we received is, do we feel that the 5-3-1 method is an appropriate training protocol leading up to a powerlifting competition? For those of you that aren't aware of what the 5-3-1 method is, it's a training template that was designed by Jim Wendler at Elite FTS. He came up with this plan about 2 years ago, published it in an ebook, and it's really kind of taken the nation by storm, so to speak, and become an extremely popular training method. It's a 4-week template whereby you take, you find your maxes in big lifts, big compound multi-joint movements like the squat, bench press, deadlift, overhead press, and you establish those maxes, and then you use percentages of those maxes over 4 weeks of training. And each week you basically perform 3 work sets within different rep ranges. The first week you're doing sets of 5, the second week you're doing sets of 3, and the last week you're working up to a single. The 4th week is a deload week. The key component within each of these weeks is the final set, the 3rd set, and the 3rd set is basically a rep out set where you're taking the set to near failure. He recommends that you basically always try to keep 1 in the tank and not necessarily go to failure on every single set. The simplicity of this plan and this template is extremely effective, and you will definitely get stronger using this plan, no question about it. However, you don't want to confuse its simplicity with its appropriateness, so to speak, for a novice. This is definitely a plan that is more appropriate for an intermediate to an advanced lifter. And the reason is it just doesn't give enough training volume for a novice. 3 sets of practice per week, per exercise is frankly not going to cut it for a novice. Most novices and beginners, first of all, are weak, and secondly, have very poor form, and number 3, have 0 technique or haven't even developed their technique according to their own body's genetics and around the form of the exercise. So for those reasons, a novice is going to need much more time under the bar and more sets of practice just to learn the proper form. And 3 sets is not going to cut it. And the last set, being a rep out set, is not going to be a good idea for a novice because their form is really likely to get pretty sloppy, and you never want to reinforce a negative motor pattern. So that being said, this program is definitely geared toward an intermediate and an advanced lifter, and another reason for that is the auto-regulatory component of those rep out sets. A novice is not going to know when to really push it to the limit versus shutting it down, where an intermediate to advanced lifter who's been training for a while is definitely going to have a better understanding of their body, their systemic capabilities and so forth, and they're going to know when to push and when not to push. I do not recommend the 5-3-1 method leading up to a competition, and here's why. First of all, that's not to say that many people haven't had great success doing this, because there's plenty of testimonials to show otherwise, that people have used this system. I just don't think it's your best bet because there aren't enough sets or practice, if you will, with heavier loads. Leading up to a competition, you should be doing heavy doubles and singles and triples and so forth, and this program just does not afford you that opportunity. You really shouldn't be repping out in big movements, taking them to near failure. It doesn't matter if you can do a bench press, you know, for 8 reps, because at the meet you're only going to be required to do 1. So this really is a more appropriate plan for off-season strength training, or using it for your assistance movements. I've used it with the overhead press, which I use as an assistance exercise to the bench press, and I have used it leading up to a competition, but I would definitely not recommend using the 5-3-1 plan for the competitive lifts leading up to a competition. One last note about the 5-3-1 method and its effectiveness. This is definitely an extremely effective method for increasing your raw strength. I definitely would not espouse using this program while using gear. You don't want to be doing rep out sets in a bench shirt, squat suit, knee wraps, etc. So that being said, this is extremely effective for raw strength, which means basically a belt or less, and an effective method for off-season training. But I wouldn't use it leading up to a meet. It shouldn't be used in season, so to speak, unless, of course, again, you're only using it for your assistance exercises.